Let's talk about those long-term implications. I know you don't have a crystal ball. You can't see into the future here. This conflict has been going on now, like I said, for 1,000 days. So when Trump comes into office, he's going to try to rapidly bring this to a conclusion. What does that look like long-term for Ukraine if they have to make those concessions that they really aren't too favorably wanting to make?
So I don't have a crystal ball. I think that right now we're trying to figure out exactly what Trump's long-term perspective, long-term goal set is. When he takes office, we know that his initial goal, his initial priority, will be bringing about some conclusion to the current fighting, even if that's a temporary ceasefire. Longer term, I think it's an open question as to what an acceptable structure for long-term peace looks like. There are multiple actors that need to be bought in: Ukraine, Russia, Europe, and the US. I think Trump's perspective is just one of many. He might be one of the louder voices in the room, but his perspective is just part of what will ultimately be a long-term political solution. And to be quite frank, I don't think anyone has a clear perspective on what exactly that long-term political solution currently entails.
So then let's look a little less long-term. In the next 2 months and 1 day, what specifically are you looking out for when it comes to this conflict and the United States' involvement in it?
So the first thing I'd be looking at is what else does the Biden administration do? Removing restrictions on long-range strikes was something we've been expecting now for several weeks. What next would be potentially what he does with remaining presidential drawdown authority. There's still several $billions in U.S. drawdown authority that would send weapons from the U.S. defense stockpile to Ukraine. Does Biden follow through and actually deliver those weapons? That would be step one. Step two is, Biden, or what can Biden and Congress do to codify some of the long-term elements of U.S. military support? There are efforts currently underway to solidify or codify some of the long-term security agreements, albeit agreements which stop well short of mutual defense, to try and give Ukraine some sort of surety in long-term U.S. involvement. It's not clear how much of that they can actually lock in through legislation in the end of the year. I think the last thing to watch is, where does Trump position himself? We've seen some of his nominees, Mike Waltz in particular, who've advocated for military backing of Ukraine while sharing Trump's goal of bringing the conflict to an end as rapidly as possible. Does Trump position himself? Does he offer additional clarity on what his plan would be? Do we see some formal outreach? Trump's not going to be the president, but he will be relatively influential. Everyone knows that he'll be the president in, just about 61 days. So does Trump use that platform to try and advocate for a specific sort of beginning position in negotiations?
Well, there's certainly a lot to look out for, and as the situation continues to develop, I hope you come back on and break it down with us. Clayton Allen, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.